AgweekTV Weather is brought to you by Kaler Farms. AgweekTV Weather is brought to you by Kaler Farms.
It is that time of the year when tropical weather can sometimes affect the weather of the Corn Belt and Northern Plains. Not necessarily by raining directly, but by affecting the pattern, and that may be the case this time. The tropical Atlantic is getting busy. Florida getting it this weekend. The East Coast will likely be in for some heavy rains over the next few days. Eastern Corn Belt still very summery. That's another headline, and turning cooler across the Northern Plains over the next 2 weeks. That tropical Atlantic thing is something we'll want to watch. But first of all, let's take a look at the Drought Monitor here in the Northern Plains. It's still very wet out in the Black Hills area. A little bit dry in the Black Hills area, a little dry around here, but really most of Minnesota, most of North Dakota, no longer is there really dry weather any bit of a problem. In most cases, there are some spots that are more wet problems than dry problems. Some dry weather in New York and in the Northern Rockies, but really the Great Plains, most of the Corn Belt, with the exception of Northern Ohio, just no problems as far as not enough rain is concerned. Now, the tropics are active. Right now, it's the southeast. Over the next several days, it'll be the eastern seaboard, and this is being allowed to happen because of this high-pressure ridge. Talked about this last week. Well, watch the jet stream this week. Got a low-pressure trough. That's going to mean a good bit of rain over the course of this weekend in the Northern Plains, and the speed of this tropical system moving up the Atlantic coastline may cause rains to linger in some part of the Northern Plains up towards southern parts of Canada. And it does look like it will eventually cool down to the Northern Plains while hot weather lingers over here in the eastern states, every place where it's not raining. And as we move toward the end of the week and the weekend, another low-pressure trough builds into the Pacific Northwest, possibly setting up for a little more cool weather and a little more rain for some parts of the Northern Plains. Here's your forecast for this week. I do expect it to be somewhat wet over the eastern Dakotas, Minnesota, and Iowa. And of course, we're getting it this weekend in the southeast, and along the week there will likely be some very heavy rains in parts of the middle Atlantic states. Western part of the nation will continue to be quite dry. There will be some showers and thunderstorms in the southeast, and the rains along the eastern seaboard may be more substantial than this, but I do think there will be not necessarily crazy heavy rains, but generally pretty wet weather over the Northern Plains and upper Midwest. Temperatures still quite warm in much of the south, but we are starting to see the beginnings of a cool down into the Midwest and the Northern Plains. The second week, much cooler weather builds into the Rockies. It'll still be fairly warm in much of the Northern Plains, but beginning to cool down. Rain coming back into the Pacific Northwest, stormy in the south, and the Midwest rains will shift a little bit east, but I think there will be some rains for the Northern Plains. So in summation, here's what we've got going on. Hot weather, eastern Corn Belt. Rain again in the upper Midwest, and it's hurricane season, which definitely means changes.